It was Saturday. Slow, quiet, ordinary. I came home a little earlier than planned. My husband had texted me that he'd be stuck in a meeting for a while longer. We agreed to go out for dinner around 8. It was just after 5. I dropped my bag near the entryway, kicked off my sneakers, and headed to the kitchen. The smell of freshly brewed coffee caught me off guard, strong, nutty, his favorite blend. He must have come home earlier, too. "You're home already?" I called out. Upstairs, came the reply, calm, low, familiar. I smiled to myself. Maybe he changed his plans. Maybe he missed me. I freshened up in the bathroom, running cool water over my wrists. My reflection caught my eye, slightly flushed cheeks, a little smudge of gloss still on my lips. The same gloss he once said made him fall in love with my mouth. I walked upstairs. The hallway smelled like his cologne, warm, spicy, something that always made me want to bury my face in his neck. He was standing by the closet, shirtless, back turned to me. I loved that back, lean and toned, the way it narrowed down at his waist. I stepped behind him and wrapped my arms around his torso. He rested his hands over mine, didn't even flinch. "Maybe you could say you missed me?" I whispered. "I missed you," he murmured, just above a breath. The voice sounded right. Familiar. I slid my fingers up his chest, slow, lazy. I felt his breath catch as I traced his collarbone, then lower, toward his stomach. He turned. Faced me. Eyes warm. Lips parted. I smiled and leaned in. Our mouths met. It was slow at first, then deeper, rougher. His hands found my hips and pulled me in. My heart thudded. My body remembered this. Wanted this. And then, in the middle of the kiss, I whispered his name. He froze. He pulled back slightly and looked me straight in the eyes. "That's not me," he said. I blinked. And suddenly, I noticed everything at once. The wrong watch. The wrong eyes. No wedding ring. It wasn't my husband. It was his brother. And still, I didn't move away. His words echoed in my head like a warning I didn't want to hear. That's not me. Everything inside me should have recoiled, from shock, from guilt, from the fact that I had just kissed the wrong man. But I didn't step back. I just stood there. Still close enough to feel his breath on my lips. His eyes searched mine, not with panic, not with apology. But with something else. Hunger. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. I swallowed hard. My hand was still resting on his chest. He didn't move it. And neither did I. I should have said something, laughed it off, made up an excuse, covered myself in shame. But the truth? I didn't feel shame. I felt awake. In a way I hadn't felt in months. "I'm sorry," I said, finally. But my voice didn't sound sorry. It sounded like a dare. He raised an eyebrow slightly. "Are you?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped back half a pace. Not to leave, just enough to see him clearly. He wasn't like my husband. Broader in the shoulders. A little taller. Rougher around the edges. There was a tension in the air now. The kind that buzzes between two people who know exactly what just happened, and know it could happen again, so easily. He didn't touch me. Not yet. But he didn't look away either. "I thought you were him," I whispered. The voice, the cologne. "It's his cologne," he said. "He left it in the guest bathroom. I used it after my shower." My stomach flipped. "So you knew," I said quietly. He didn't nod. He didn't deny it. He just watched me, like he was reading a page I hadn't meant to show. And still, I didn't leave. I could have turned around. Walked down those stairs. Pretended nothing had happened. But I didn't. I stayed. And I let him close the distance again. He didn't touch me at first. He just stood there, close enough for our shadows to merge under the soft hallway light. My heart was beating faster now, not out of fear, but something far more dangerous. Excitement. This was wrong. Every part of it. And yet, I didn't want to move. I didn't want to stop feeling this charged, this scene. His eyes never left mine. There was something about the way he looked at me, not like a brother-in-law. Not even like a man who'd made a mistake. He looked at me like he had been waiting for this moment longer than I realized. And maybe I had too. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked, voice low. It was the right question. The polite question. But the wrong time to ask it. I could have said yes. I could have nodded, turned away, erased this with a glass of wine and forced silence. But my body didn't move. My lips didn't open. And in that hesitation, he stepped forward. Slowly. Deliberately. He didn't lunge or rush or press. He moved like a man who had already read the answer in my eyes, and was giving me time to catch up with my own decision. My back brushed against the wall. I hadn't even realized I was backing up. And then his hand reached up, just one, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. That tiny touch felt electric. His fingers lingered against my cheek for a second longer than they should have. "You're shaking," he whispered. "I know," I breathed. He leaned in, and I tilted my head without meaning to. My lips parted. But he didn't kiss me. Not yet. Instead, he whispered, "Tell me to stop." I looked up at him. And I couldn't. Not because I didn't know how. But because I didn't want to. Because it had been so long since someone made me feel like I was more than just someone's wife. So I didn't tell him to stop. And he didn't ask again. His lips hovered near mine. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath, but not close enough to touch. He was waiting, giving me one last chance. One last exit. And I didn't take it. I leaned in the final inch. And that was all he needed. The kiss was nothing like before. It wasn't soft or uncertain. It was full of tension, of hunger, of every thought we weren't supposed to be thinking. His hand slid to my waist and pulled me closer. My fingers found his jaw, then his neck, and I swore I felt him shiver. I wasn't thinking about my husband. Not in that moment. Not when another man's mouth was on mine, and my body was responding like it had been waiting for this, aching for this. I could feel the wall behind my back, and him in front of me, and the space between us completely gone. I didn't stop it. I deepened it. I let his hands explore. I let mine do the same. And when he pressed his forehead to mine, breathing hard, I didn't pull away. We didn't speak. Words would have ruined it. Because if we said anything, we'd have to admit what this really was. This wasn't a mistake anymore. This was a choice. And the worst part? It didn't feel wrong. Not in that second. It felt like something that had been building, something that didn't need a reason. Just an opening. And now that we were in it, neither of us knew how to stop. We didn't speak for a while. Not because there was nothing to say, but because saying anything would have made it too real. Words had weight, and if either of us spoke, we'd hear what we already knew: we had gone too far. He was still close enough that our bodies were barely apart, but something had shifted. The air between us had changed. The room was quiet, but inside me, everything was loud. My heart. My thoughts. The rush of blood that hadn't calmed yet. I backed away slowly, brushing past him, needing space, not just physically, but mentally. I needed to breathe. I needed to feel in control again. My hand went instinctively to my lips. They still tingled. I turned my back to him and took a deep breath, closing my eyes. And that's when it hit me. Not regret. But memory. It had been months, maybe longer, since my husband had kissed me like that. Not a hello kiss, not a distracted goodnight. But a kiss that said I see you. I want you. Right now. And that's what scared me more than the kiss itself. I hadn't just let it happen. I had wanted it. What are we doing? I finally asked, still facing the wall. His voice came softly from behind me. I don't know. I turned to look at him, expecting shame. Guilt. Panic. But there was none of that. There was just him, standing there, shirtless, his chest still rising and falling with uneven breaths. Looking at me like I was something more than just his brother's wife. I hated how much I liked that look. He took a step toward me, slowly. I didn't plan this. I know, I said. I've thought about it, he added, quieter this time. My stomach flipped. How long? He hesitated. A while. The silence that followed was loud. And suddenly, I remembered all the moments I'd ignored. The way he looked at me when my husband wasn't watching. The extra seconds our hands had brushed. The compliments that seemed harmless, but always lingered. I had seen the signs. I just hadn't admitted to myself that I wanted them to mean something. I walked to the edge of the bed and sat down, trying to collect myself. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. I should feel worse than I do, I whispered. He sat beside me, close, but not touching. You don't have to pretend, he said. And it was in that moment I realized something dangerous. He wasn't trying to seduce me. He already had. He didn't reach for me. Not right away. We just sat there, side by side, like two people trying to pretend we hadn't just crossed a line we could never uncross. But the silence was thick. Too thick. And then I felt it. The slow, quiet way his pinky finger brushed against mine. Barely a touch, almost nothing at all. But it made my breath hitch. That one tiny contact told me everything. This wasn't over. Not for him. And not for me either. I could have stood up. Said I needed a shower. Or fresh air. Or 1,000 other things that sounded like boundaries. Instead, I turned my hand over. And I laced my fingers through his. He looked at me then, not like he was asking for permission anymore, but like he was already inside the same storm I was. I can't stop thinking about you, he said quietly. Even when I try. You should have tried harder, I whispered back. But my thumb was already brushing against his. There was a pause, a beat of restraint, and then he leaned in again. This time slower, more deliberate. As if asking one final time without asking out loud. And I answered without words. The kiss was deeper this time. Hungrier. More urgent. His hand moved to my thigh, fingers curling just beneath the hem of my shorts. I didn't stop him. I shifted closer. Let my legs part slightly. My breath caught in my throat as his hand slid higher. We were past careful now. Every movement carried weight. Meaning. Temptation. And something darker. I wasn't just kissing my husband's brother. I was wanting him. I was letting him touch me in places only one man ever had before, and doing it without a second thought. My body felt electric, hyper-aware of everything. The way his palm pressed against my skin. The sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. The quiet creak of the mattress beneath us. Somewhere, in the back of my mind, I knew this would destroy everything. But right now, destruction felt beautiful. It felt like freedom. And I wasn't ready to let it go. I don't remember how long it lasted. Minutes? An hour? Maybe more. Time blurred. Clothes shifted. Hands explored. Whispers filled the room, half sentences, half moans. Nothing about it felt planned. Nothing felt logical. It was all instinct. Impulse. Skin. When it ended, neither of us moved right away. I was still curled against him, his hand resting flat on my stomach like he was trying to memorize the shape of me. I stared at the ceiling, my chest rising and falling slowly, my mind somehow full and blank at the same time. I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was thinking about his hand. His mouth. His voice. The way he had said my name, not like a brother-in-law. Not like anyone who cared what this would mean tomorrow. Just a man who wanted a woman. And took her. And the worst part? I let him. Willingly. Completely. I turned slightly, resting my head on his shoulder. I don't know why I did that. It felt intimate. Too intimate. But he didn't move. He just let me lie there. "You okay?" he asked finally. I nodded before I even thought about it. Yeah. It was a lie. I wasn't okay. I didn't even know what I was. I sat up, reaching for my shirt, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. Not just physically, emotionally. Like he had seen something I hadn't meant to show. He watched me dress without saying a word. Not with guilt. Not with arrogance. Just quiet focus. When I stood, I avoided his eyes. "If anyone finds out." "They won't," he cut in quickly. "I won't say anything. I swear." I nodded, arms crossed over my chest now. My skin still burned from his touch, but my mind was racing ahead, to my husband, to what I'd just done, to how easily I'd done it. "I should go," I said softly. He stood too. Stepped close. "Do you want to?" he asked. That question hung in the air like smoke. I didn't answer. Because the truth? I didn't. But I left anyway. I didn't go far. Just down the hall. Into my bedroom. Into our bedroom. I closed the door behind me and stood there for a moment, staring at the floor like it might give me answers. It didn't. The sheets were still made. The room was still perfect. And everything inside me was chaos. I peeled off my clothes slowly, as if doing it any faster might make the shame come quicker. I could still feel him on me, in the heat between my legs, the tingle across my collarbone, the invisible trace of his breath behind my ear. I turned on the shower and stepped in. The water was hot. Too hot. But I didn't adjust it. I let it sting. I let it try to scrub away what I'd just done. But it didn't work. Because it didn't feel wrong. It felt unforgettable. And that's what scared me. After the shower, I wrapped myself in a towel and sat at the edge of the bed. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I checked my phone, still no message from my husband. Typical. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over his name. I could have called. Pretended I missed him. Asked how the meeting went. But instead, I opened the Photos app. I scrolled until I found a picture of him and his brother, arms around each other, smiling at the camera like nothing could ever divide them. I stared at it too long. Not because of my husband. But because I wanted to look at him. The one I'd just had. His jawline. The way he stood. The slight curve of his smirk. Now that I had tasted it, I couldn't unsee it. The sound of footsteps down the hall pulled me back. I froze. Listened. But they faded again. He wasn't coming back. Not tonight. And that made it worse. Because part of me wanted him to. The next morning felt unreal. I woke up in my own bed, hair still damp from the night before, body stiff from a sleep that never really came. The sun poured through the windows like nothing was wrong. Like I hadn't done what I did. I could hear him downstairs, my husband, making breakfast. Like any other Sunday. I got up slowly, pulled on a robe, and went to the mirror. There were no marks. No visible proof. But I felt it. The way my lips still tingled. The dull ache in my hips. The memory of hands that didn't belong to the man waiting in the kitchen. I stared at my reflection, trying to see some version of myself that I could trust. But all I saw was a woman who had crossed a line, and didn't feel as broken about it as she should. I joined him in the kitchen a few minutes later. He smiled when he saw me, kissed my cheek, handed me a cup of coffee. "You slept like a rock," he said. I smiled. Lied. "Yeah, guess I needed it." We talked about nothing, groceries, weekend plans, a show we never finished. And I nodded in all the right places, even laughed a little. But inside, my head was full of him. His brother. Where was he now? What was he thinking? Did he feel what I felt? Was this just a mistake to him? Later that day, when my husband left to run errands, I found myself walking past the guest room. The door was cracked open. Empty. He was gone. But the way I felt? Still here. I stood in the doorway for a long time, arms crossed, heartbeat rising without reason. And before I could stop myself, I stepped in. Not to find anything. Just to feel it again. The place. The memory. The pull. I sat on the bed where it happened. I closed my eyes. And for a moment, I wished it would happen again. 3 days passed. We didn't speak. We didn't text. We didn't so much as glance at each other, which wasn't hard, since he made himself completely unavailable. Gone. No calls. No visits. No sound. It should have made it easier. But it didn't. Instead, it left me raw. Agitated. Restless. I caught myself thinking about it constantly, not just what we'd done, but how it felt. The way he touched me like he'd already imagined it 1,000 times. The way he didn't say sorry. The way I didn't want him to. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I opened his contact in my phone. Stared at the screen. Closed it again. I wasn't going to reach out. But that decision only lasted an hour. Because at 11:42 p.m., I got a message from him. "I shouldn't be texting you." My heart jumped before I even opened it fully. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling slightly, already typing before I had time to stop myself. Then don't. 3 dots. Then none. Then again. "I can't stop thinking about you." I didn't reply. I couldn't. Because I knew the second I did, I'd be choosing this again. But my body was already betraying me, pulse racing, skin heating, memory replaying itself on a loop. A minute later, another message. "Can I see you?" I stared at those 4 words like they were a match being held over gasoline. And before I could overthink it, I typed back. "Where?" He sent an address. Not his place. Not mine. A hotel. Nothing fancy. Simple. Clean. Discreet. I stared at the location for 15 minutes before I moved. Then I grabbed my coat. My keys. I didn't even bother changing. The less I thought about it, the easier it was to go through with it. My husband was already asleep when I left. Curled on his side, breathing steady. Peaceful. I stood by the bedroom door for a second too long. Then walked away. The drive was quiet. Too quiet. Every streetlight felt like a spotlight. Every turn like a test. And still, I kept going. When I got to the hotel, I didn't text. He already knew I was coming. He opened the door before I knocked. He was wearing a plain black t-shirt and sweatpants. No smile. No words. Just heat in his eyes. I stepped inside without speaking. The room smelled like him. Like last time. Like temptation. He closed the door behind me, slowly, and when he turned around, I was already walking toward him. He didn't reach for me first. I did. I grabbed his shirt, pulled him close, and kissed him like I hadn't in years. Like I was starved for something only he could give me. And maybe I was. His hands found my face, my hips, my back. He pushed me gently toward the bed, his mouth never leaving mine. There was no hesitation this time. No pause. No resistance. Only want. Only heat. And when he laid me down, when our bodies came together like they'd always belonged, it didn't feel like cheating anymore. It felt like claiming. We didn't talk afterward. Not really. He traced slow circles across my back while I lay on his chest, trying not to think about the clock. Trying not to think about what came next. I knew I couldn't stay long. And I knew what I was going back to. But I didn't want to move. His hand moved through my hair once, then stopped. As if he was thinking the same thing I was. That this moment would end. That it had to end. I sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around me. He watched me in the dim light, eyes soft, unreadable. "You don't have to go yet," he said. But we both knew I did. I got dressed in silence. No kisses this time. No lingering touches. Not because we didn't want them, but because we couldn't afford them. Not anymore. When I reached the door, I turned back. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head down like he was carrying more than he could hold. "I won't tell him," he said, without looking at me. "I know." I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to say I'm sorry. But neither of those words felt right. So I said nothing. And I left. The drive home was the longest of my life. My husband was still asleep when I slipped back into bed. He stirred, rolled toward me, and mumbled something I couldn't catch. I whispered, "Go back to sleep," and he did. Just like that. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. In the days that followed, I tried to return to normal. I smiled when I was supposed to. Laughed when I needed to. Touched him like I meant it. But inside, I was somewhere else. With someone else. Not because I loved him. Not because I wanted to ruin anything. But because for a moment. He made me feel alive. And now, I lived with the silence that followed. The silence of the secret I'd never confess. The silence between me and the man who would always know the truth. The silence in my own heart, the part of me I'd never get back. And I don't know what's worse. That it happened. Or that, even now, a small part of me wants it to happen again.